sure we got that. In Canada, and France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands, okay? And Mary was the recipient of the Daniel Vajon Award, judged by Marge Pursery, and the Furman Houghton Award from the New England Poetry Club. Her collection, Roomful of Sparrows, was a semi-finalist in the New Woman's Voice series, okay? And she has a new book out, Aerialist, and we'll discuss a bit about that too, okay? Mary, you studied with Susan Donnelly for years, right? And still do, right? Tell me about that experience, because we all need poetry teachers, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's see, how did I first find out about Susan? I had a couple of friends who had taken a workshop with her, and she lived where she had workshops, and she still has workshops in her home. She used to live in Cambridge, and now she moved to Arlington.
Natural progression.
Natural progression. So I was looking for a group for critique. I had been at the Cambridge Center for Adult Ed. I took classes with Harold Bond, which I know a lot
passed
of
away,
in the community have taken classes with him. And I was looking for a group, and so some friends of mine said, Susan, it's not too close, not too far away. Why don't you take some classes with her? So, yeah.
And it was more than a proximity. You probably heard a lot about her.
Well, yeah, she's published in the New Yorker, the Atlantic Monthly, and she's, a very...
What makes her a good teacher for you?
So it's partly the group. She has, there are, always really good people in the group who are good readers and writers, and so they're very discerning and perceptive in their comments on the work. And then Susan gives really great assignments, so good writing prompts. And I'm not one that, I don't think of myself as even looking for prompts, but when she gives them, it always sparks something. So.
Okay, it prompts something.
Yeah,
all right.
Prompts something.
Now, she said, I think, believe you compose faith from the gray every day, right? And actually, that's from one of your poems. Tell me what you think she means by that, or what you interpret her to mean by that. Faith in the gray day.
So in that line comes from a poem that actually it's the title poem from this book.
Aerialist.
Aerialist. And in that poem, this woman just gets up on the red line.
Is this true?
It's a true story.
Okay.
We're on the red line, and there weren't many people in the car, but she gets up. There are these straps, these hanging straps.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the gray every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she just pulls herself up into a sea, just coiled up
a young woman?
Up the ceiling. Yeah, she was young.
Yeah.
She was young.
Okay.
But so controlled. It was, nothing jerky about it. We're in this train that's kind of going around the corner. It's going from Porter to Harvard, and right, and it was just so powerful the way she pulled herself up with this grace. It was really beautiful to watch. And the other people in the train are just kind of like, that usual, like, something's happening here. I don't know. Look over.
But being the poet, you're on it like a hornet, right?
Well, yeah, you have to be.
Right. You don't see stuff like that all the time.
No. So, I guess there's something. There was faith involved, right? That they were going to hold her, that she was going to be able to execute this maneuver on this moving train as it's going around the corner and back and forth, and she's swinging. It's a I don't know. There's such you just think about how tentative everything is, really. And the gray every day. It's like I'm on that train every day. she made something out of it, and it
Something that was banal, an everyday trip into.
right. And I think it takes faith. It takes those leaps that we make into unknown. That's composed of the gray every day.
Nice. Now, you have one poem we were just discussing. Proust paints distance, right? Today's lesson or something today is Proust paints distance. And I love how you equate children catching minnows in a jar and how they were sort of like a splash in the pan themselves, when we were all starting out, right? And you're influenced by Proust, who was into lost memory and spiritual redemption. Is this something that that you deal with a lot in your work? These themes.
Yeah. So that poem is.
We have a lost memory of ourselves being in being sperm being picked out and made into the egg. That's how I viewed it.
That's funny. I had never had that view of it.
Oh, all right. That's that bad? No.
No, that's fine.
I just viewed it that way.
Happen, right?
Yeah. And the water were all.
poem about sperm already.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't even
All right,
there
well.
at all, but that's fine. So part of that poem is a found poem, and I tend to write about what I'm reading.
Well, you were reading Proust and the
so
scale.
I was reading Proust, and so that poem came out of that, and it's just such for me, it just captured this. They're taking these glass jars and they're dipping them
Mm-hmm.
and catching bait, and the jars he describes as being, it's like impalpable water. They have that clarity of water, and they're flowing crystals. And this was I took from the translation, but it's such I guess for me it was about the fragility and the transparency of youth and being a child, and so they're getting these fish, and the fish are flashing in the jar, and that to me is like a the child once was. It's just like this flash, right? You're
A flash in the pan.
flash in the pan. I hadn't thought about sperm, but there
Well,
you go.
Maybe I'm a sick individual. I don't know. I don't know. But I was going to say, can you read that poem?
Yeah.
Just right now. I mean, we just think it would be good after you made that explanation.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. And today, Proust paints distance. Glass jars, the village children lower them into the vivant for minnows. Crystal containers of flowing crystal. Insoluble glass. Water impalpable. The fish flashing, caught and carried for bait. Come time, come, bite. That child once was, that splash in a jar. I'm never going to read that poem again the same way.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe men think differently than women, I don't know, but whatever it is. But you could see where I might get that. I could just see it. I mean, I was thinking of the water and how we start out in the water and the ambiotic fluid and all that stuff, and I was just thinking that, because I had a poem like that in the sense that when we were kids, boys are terrible, we've tortured toads and stuff, and I was just thinking it was like a Holocaust, and then we were Jewish boys, and one of these sort of, I don't know, I guess I was having the same sense of that. But anyway, enough about me. Now I was going to say to you, talking about that Aerialist poem, which is the title of your new book. From who? Goldwig. Okay. A beautiful cover and all that. And available on Amazon and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but don't get it from Amazon.
Yeah, don't. Get it from the publisher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
For me, no.
absolutely.
Groliers, go to Groliers.
Go to the Grow Your Poetry bookshop.
Yes,
Yep,
yeah.
yep. So, I always carry a little notebook in my back where I whip out, because I never know when I'm going to see something or hear something. Do you have the same sort of mythology? Or?
Yes.
So you had a little book waiting to be,
Yeah,
right.
no, I have a notebook. It's in my bag.
Okay, at all times.
At all times.
So you're like a Western gunslinger,
Yes.
ready to whip it out.
I tell my students that, there's waterproof paper, right? You
Yeah.
you can get that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could take notes in the shower.
Right, right.
Yeah. For me, it's morning time when I
Uh-huh.
right.
When you bring out your thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's part of being a poet. I see you have to disconnect all the stuff in your ears and the little texting and all that stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah,
get
stuff in my ears.
yeah, right. I never do either, and texting and all this other, and you have to be open to the world, right?
Right.
Okay, we agree there. Now, you have a degree in applied linguistics from Boston University. Tell us about that. It's what's that about? Applied linguistics.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started out. I studied English for a while.
Yeah.
And but I liked books too much to do that.
How do you mean?
I mean, I didn't like doing critical analysis.
It ruined it for you?
It ruined my love of. I just love
And the
to read.
creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. A lot of PhDs have told me
Yeah.
that it ruined them as poets because
Yeah.
they just did all this analytical stuff. Huh?
And I've always been writing poetry.
Right.
I've always been writing. So linguistics was a way. I didn't know it existed. When I was in the Peace Corps, and after the Peace Corps, there was this kind of Ohio University had kind of a track for returned Peace Corps volunteers, and one of the programs was linguistics. And I asked, my husband was also interested, and he knew what he wanted to do, Latin American studies. He was very clear. And I was kind of going through the programs, and I was like, what's linguistics? And then when I figured out what it was perfect, because I could really study language and study how we make meaning with language, which was much more interesting to me. It didn't interrupt my love of, or didn't mess with my appreciation for literature.
Did it enhance it?
Enjoyment. Yeah, it did actually.
Yeah.
So linguistics is the study of language, and not necessarily languages. So I didn't really study different languages, but I studied, about syntax and semantics and phonology and phonetics and those aspects. And I ended up writing for my master's thesis an analysis of an E.E. Cummings poem.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone lived in a pretty how town, which is,
Mm-hmm.
It's E.E. Cummings. So the syntax is all over it. So I was trying to understand, what's going on
Mm-hmm.
with the syntax and the semantics. But it was a different kind of analysis. It wasn't an interpretive analysis of the meaning. It was more about the form. And then I wanted to go on with that, and I studied.
There's a lot of controversy about that sort of that sort of approach to literature.
The semantic? Or, the
breaking the poem down into its little component parts and all that, studying the words and.
Yeah.
I mean, the poem, the whole poem isn't important. It's
right.
To people who have that emphasis. Maybe I got it wrong, but I remember there was a controversy about that.
Well, I think that it's. I personally, I don't like to flay literature. I don't like to, take it apart. And take the parts and look at them in.
All right.
But it was a way for me to bring together my my love of poetry into this realm of linguistics. So then when I went to BU, I didn't do any more with poetry other than be writing. I was writing it all the time. But when I got to BU, I was postmasters. I was working my PhD, and then I was looking. Actually, I started with cognitive science and looking at the way language is organized in the brain. So I was doing neurolinguistics for a while, and then I switched, because what happened was I was working in a lab, and we had these different experiments, and most of them were done on undergrads, for first-year students to come in because they had to. And I'd spend an hour with them, and they invariably left with a headache. They were doing these, binary things where they had to press if they saw something, press a button, and they'd be like, and they do this, and they'd just leave, and their head hurt. And it's like it's really fascinating work what you can learn about the way we organize information.
Yeah, it's more scientific. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't like that interface with people where they'd leave with a headache,
So like you're a dentist or something.
Yeah. So then at the same time, I was kind of making a decision between doing more of that or I was interested in discourse analysis, which is what I ended up doing my dissertation in as well. And that's looking at conversations and how people make meaning. I was looking specifically at how people learn about buoyancy, which is a scientific concept. And how
What's that?
Well, buoyancy, how things sink and float. It's just plain old sink and float. So, making objects and, what's floating, what's sinking, and why. And so for my dissertation, I was analyzing the conversation that supports those understandings. What does that sound like when people learn something? And how do we learn from each other? What role does language play in that?
Interesting.
So, yeah.
And then a unique approach, I would say. I haven't interviewed many people. You grew up on a farm, right? And the old saying is, how do you keep the boys down on the farm once they've seen Gay Paris, and you came to this elitist East Coast area. Was that a big transition for you? And do you think you still maintained? And I think I answer yes. You're sort of girl on the farm sensibility in the way that you write about nature and things of that nature. But just to hear your comment about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. My family's all still in the Midwest in Michigan.
Yeah, I saw pictures of your family on Facebook recently.
Yeah, and I have to say I do experience some culture shock every time I go back and forth, because it's really a very different place. And different things that you kind of think about when you're there, and it's they're kind of separate sensibilities, I think.
Are your parents academics or no, they're farmers or?
Yeah.
So what do they think of this linguistics and the poetry and?
I don't know. When I told my grandmother that she wanted to know what I was doing, and I told her I was working on a PhD, and she wrote it down on a piece of paper, PhD. She didn't know what that was. She said, well, what do you do with one of those? And I said, well, I want to be a professor. She said, but professors have beards. How can you do that? So it was a very, not a...
But now that you're an accomplished career woman, what is there an acceptance?
Well, it's not that there wasn't an acceptance, but I think there's just a lot of mystery around the whole.
They can't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I doing out here?
Yeah. Why don't you come home? Yeah. And finally, how is it teaching literature and stuff like that to future pharmacists? Because you do work at the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy.
Right, and health science.
Health science.
Right. So I have a lot of, there are students that are in pre-med and nursing, and as well as pharmacy. And the pharmacy is a 6-year program. So
it's a doctorate program, isn't it? Kind of. You're a doctor of pharmacy when you get out. Yeah.
They don't do a dissertation.
Yeah.
It's a terminal degree, like a JD. Or, but it's a blast actually teaching creative writing there, because I always think about it like when you're a kid and you stand in a doorway and you press your arms against it. Have you ever done that? Where you press your arms against the doorway and then you step out and your arms just kind of float up because your muscles are. I feel like my students have that experience where they come in and it's a very, very focused, very kind of narrow curriculum. And the whole idea that I want them to play with language and they're reading things that are...
Because you don't want to play with languages in your role as a pharmacy, you know, you don't want to get too creative on those prescriptions, right?
Well, no, you don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, part of it is like identity. I'm a math science person. And they share our students share the cafeteria with Mass Art. And you walk into that cafeteria and you can tell who's going where.
Right.
You can tell who's going to Mass Art, who's going to MCPHS University. And
Quite a mix, huh?
It's very interesting. Although there are those students that surprise you.
Yeah.
And a lot of those are the ones that end up in my class. But
and end up giving you prescriptions at CVS?
maybe, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're good students. The students are very, very focused. They're dedicated. They work really hard.
Yep, they have to be. So we got about 8 minutes. So I want you to read from your work, whatever you want to read. And again, it's the Aerialist, and it can be bought on the not Amazon, but what's the site?
Grolier, or you could go to my website.
Mary, what is it?
Just Buchinger.
.com?
.com.
Okay. Go ahead.
My son made it. So you want me to read?
Yes.
Okay. What should I read?
Anything you want to read. Anything that you fancy.
Okay. Let's see. I'll read. I wasn't ready for this. I think I'll read this one from a friend of mine who has passed away. It's called On Your Birthday. Last summer's aster stands akimbo beneath a meeting of roofs, sheathed in ice, its silver death at angles to itself, caught unaware. The glassy arabesque stems and bent petioles draw a cold sun and dazzle. Its happenstance beauty knifes me. Friend, you are not here. I walk slick narrows between hard snowbanks, a smooth sycamore limb in my reach. Steady myself or swing? I am every age I have ever been, recapitulating again, memory peeled back, your thumb nudging as if to separate those capsuled moments secreted away, tucked and ordered like hours in a day. Why did you die so early? Where are you? We'd always found a place within a place. That was our flair. How we labored to astonish, hoisting rickety chairs up on cabinets, curled hair grazing the ceiling as we girdled our way toward womanhood. That exquisite aster cannot shrug its ice alone. I'm torn, knowing you'd love the noise, the spectacle of its splintering. But I say, leave it. The February sun is growing teeth. Let the weed come undone, bead by bead, just as its translucent robe was woven. See, we never did agree. Seeds scattered around the stalk, their faces in dirt, poised to pulse. I'll pretend to leave something of you at your distant daughter's feet. I'm nothing to them, but a reminder of a life before theirs, before death. Nothing more than this flower cloaked in aging winter's lace.
Nice, nice.
Should I read another one?
Absolutely. Got a few more minutes.
I think I'll read this one.
Okay.
This is This one's called The Subject is a Long
Mary
One.
Buchinger.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Don't play with your toys.
Yeah, I know. I was turning it because we don't have much. Yeah, well, go ahead.
That's right. The subject is a long one. Is this, too long? Oscar.
Oh no, we got. It's a long poem. Did you say?
Not really.
Oh, okay. No, we
But
got a few minutes.
the
Go ahead.
title is called-
We play and we'll even keep the tape going just for the sake of the tape, even if we cut off here on Somerville Community Access TV.
Okay. Oh, okay. We'll do this one.
Okay.
The subject is a long one, and that's the title comes from Oscar Wilde,
Okay.
who's writing about art.
Okay.
It's a long subject, right?
Didn't you say art is what, long and something?
The subject is a long one.
What's that?
Long.
Yeah. Right.
And something else?
No, I'm forget it. I was just digressing. Go ahead.
So it starts out with a guy talking.
Okay.
What's that out-of-tune beehive I hear? Asks a giant man, spilling out of his white shirt and black suspenders. Way down at the other end of the bus station bench, the skinny guy warming up his hurdy-gurdy leans over. Out of tune what? And watching, you can't but know this thing is his life, that he's got strapped around his shoulders, held dear. This wheel fiddle in rich red and gold wood, lute rose sound holds beside the buzzing board and drone strings, a thing worn and beloved, hazarded out to introduce to the anonymous world. When the number 73 pulls in, the hurdy-gurdy's whine warbles my feet and everyone's up the steps of the kneeling bus to Watertown. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde declared art useless because it only creates a mood. Useless as a flower, as a touch, tender kiss, breathy sigh, as a glass of chilled Chardonnay. And moods, they do flounder. No sooner put your finger on them and they disperse, disappearing lightning bugs, darkly vacant as they once were bright. On the bus, an old man jokes with a long blonde girl beside him. She replies, not a hint of a taunt, like to start all over again, eh? But no, the fiddle's wheel only wilds the time. It is not useful, just searching, sweet. To the woman wrapped in a filmy scarlet scarf, sitting alone in the seat behind the driver, I'm torn between try not to cry among strangers and there, the hurdy has the gurdy. They say everything unfolds like a flower.
Thank you, Mary.